This is an amazing and extremely important video. This will sound very strange, but the geomagnetic storm and the Quebec power outage in March of 1989, and the BOMB cyclone exactly 30 years later in March of 2019, and the blackout bowl, the blackout in the Super Bowl in 2013, involving the San Francisco 49ers, and the election of Pope Francis shortly after that, in March of 2013, are prophecies from the righteous Christian God of the Bible that are predicting that dirty bombs will explode in Manhattan, New York City on December 16th, 2024, and there will be a large-scale evacuation from Manhattan Island. And this prophecy is predicting that there will be an explosion on the surface of the sun, a solar flare, coronal mass ejection that will hit Earth and knock out the North American power grid on August 13th, 2025. The date that this video was posted proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time, as does this time-stamped email and forensic notes PDF document. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. If you have already watched this introductory information, you can skip ahead no more than 10 minutes. Hello, welcome. It is predicted that President Trump will die from a heart attack on December 12th, 2024. It is also predicted that Trump's heart attack will be triggered by a directed energy weapon that will target Trump through Bluetooth technology. The components inside the pointy thing that Trump took will facilitate this, and it is believed that when Trump visited Biden at the White House, Trump's Bluetooth MAC address was obtained, which will be used to target Trump with a directed energy weapon. I am predicting that Vice President Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash in St. Louis due to a bird strike into Busch Stadium. In the area code 314, it will be a burning bush, as described in Exodus 3:14. On December 24th, 2024, she will be replaced by Michelle Obama, and then Barack Obama will replace Michelle. I am predicting that dirty bombs will explode in Manhattan, New York City, and there will be a large-scale evacuation on December 16th. And on December 17th, martial law will be declared in the U.S. I am predicting that Israel will bomb Iran on December 17th. Israel will nuke and completely destroy Damascus, Syria on December 26th, 2024. On December 17th, 2024, it is predicted that the state legislatures in the swing states that are controlled by the Democrat Party will have their electors vote for Harris instead of Trump after his death. On this same day, December 17th, it is predicted that Joe Biden will become the first world leader to use an intercontinental ballistic missile in an act of war, and he will launch a ballistic missile into Iran. This will follow the predicted dirty bombs in New York City on December 16th, and the rocket into Iran will be a wag the dog event designed to distract from the electors in the swing states voting to make Kamala Harris the president-elect. It is predicted that on December 25th, Joe Biden will suffer a stroke. After Kamala Harris's predicted plane crash on December 24th and Joe Biden's predicted stroke on December 25th, it is predicted that on December 26th, Joe Biden will appoint Michelle Obama as the vice president, and then Biden will step down. Michelle Obama will appoint Barack Obama as the 51st vice president. On January 12th, 2025, Michelle Obama will step down, and Barack Obama will become the 48th president. His public inauguration ceremony will be on January 20th, 2025. I am predicting that former President Jimmy Carter will die on January 28th. It is predicted that on April 20th, 2025, there will be an outbreak of monkeypox or Marburg disease or both. April 20th will be a symbolic beginning to a new pandemic. Alternatively, it could also be that the symbolic beginning to the new pandemic will be on April 1st, 2025, and that on April 20th, 2025, martial law will be declared because of the new outbreak. June 8th, 2025, the true Feast of Pentecost in the calendar that watches for new moons, will be the day of the resurrection rapture event. It is predicted that on June 9th, the day after the rapture, the key will open the bottomless pit and fallen angels will cross over into the earthly realm. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to the fifth trumpet judgment that is described in Revelation chapter 9, when the demonic realm collides with the earthly realm. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to demons pretending to be aliens, and it is possible that June 9th will be the day Pope Francis will announce that aliens have arrived and have made him the ambassador for the world. This will immediately give Pope Francis, the Antichrist, supreme power over governments of the world. At some point, there will be a massive Mary apparition that will deceive the masses, because all Mary apparitions in history have been demons pretending to be Mary. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to a zombie pandemic and the masses becoming demonically possessed that will be facilitated through the thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist, and 5G frequencies. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to the coming genocide politicide in America. I am predicting that singer-songwriter Paul Simon will die on August 1st, 2025. It is predicted that on August 6th, 2025, the historic barge that has been stuck on the rocks of the Niagara River for over 100 years will finally break free and crash over Niagara Falls. The reason for this is that Niagara Falls is Noah's flood symbolism, and the barge was involved in the most dramatic rescue in the history of Niagara Falls, symbolic of Noah's Ark. Niagara in the native language means straight, narrow way, and Niagara's Horseshoe Falls is perfectly aimed at the CN Tower in downtown Toronto, because Toronto and its tower are symbolic of the Tower of Babel. In a game of horseshoes, the object is to aim the horseshoe and throw it at the metal stick, which is why the Horseshoe Falls is perfectly aimed at the metal stick that is the CN Tower. God is communicating that as testament for those who will live in the 1,000 years of Christ's reign on earth, the geography of North America will, as a result of a massive earthquake, be divided by a body of water from the Great Lakes to the Mississippi Delta. This destruction will be judgment on America and Canada for attempting to divide God's land, Israel. When this happens, the water in the Great Lakes will spill out over southern Ontario and Toronto. I am predicting that a solar flare will erupt on the surface of the sun and send a coronal mass ejection that will hit Earth on August 13th, 2025, which will knock out America's power grid and will lead to food shortages. The hit of the coronal mass ejection, predicted for August 13th, that will knock out the power grid will also knock many planes out of the sky. I am predicting that on August 23rd, 2025, there will be a catastrophic asteroid hit of Earth, which will trigger the eruption of Yellowstone volcano and will cause the volcano in the Canary Islands to collapse into the Atlantic Ocean and send a mega tsunami towards the east coast. The asteroid will also trigger a mega landslide on Hawaii Island that will trigger a mega tsunami that will hit the west coast. It will also trigger the collapse of the Hoover Dam, which will cause a water panic in California, and many other devastating earthquakes. The day of the Lord, the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ, Judgment Day, will be at the end of 2026. The date that this video is posted proves that these predictions are being made ahead of time, as do these time-stamped emails and forensic notes PDF documents. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived, and more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Make a note right now of these alternative platforms that you can find me on, in case you can't find me later. If you have already watched this introductory information in another video that is about the prediction for the dirty bombs in New York City on December 16th, then you can skip ahead 20 minutes. Do not skip ahead if you have watched similar introductory information in a video about Harris's predicted plane crash or any other prediction. This introductory information is different for each prediction, and the differences in the information is essential for each prediction. God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections is only being explained on this channel. The full intended meaning of God's prophetic signs cannot be properly understood without their context and connections to other prophetic signs. God's big picture of signs is an interconnected web. It is through these connections between related prophetic signs that God is telling very important stories that are revealing very important knowledge. For example, it is through God's big picture of signs, patterns, and connections that he is revealing the way in which Barack Obama will become the president again, which is through the death of Vice President Kamala Harris in a plane crash. For many years, God has been painting this particular picture through his prophetic signs, and along the way he has been developing numerous trails of connected signs that are leading to the precise date that Harris is predicted to die in a plane crash. Here is a diagram that illustrates one such example among countless examples. As we can see here, God has demonstrated a number of trails of signs that led to August 24th, 2023. It was known ahead of time that there would be a prophetic sign related to the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash on August 24th. And then on this day, Vladimir Putin was the first public official to confirm that the Russian general and leader of the Wagner Group that attempted a coup of Vladimir Putin died in a plane crash, which hints at the soft coup that has been unfolding in America in recent years. In retrospect, it could have been easily predicted that the Russian general of the Wagner Group would die in a plane crash on August 24th because it was known that August 24th is 54 days before October 17th, which was another date God was pointing to ahead of time. This is why on August 24th, Trump, God's trumpet, had in 5 months been arrested for the 4th time in the 4th state. It also hinted at the number 54. God has been using in his signs the theme of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, the first black regiment to fight in the Civil War, who were known for fighting valiantly at Fort Wagner. This is why, in retrospect, it could have been predicted that the leader of the Wagner Group, the Russian general who attempted a coup, could have been predicted ahead of time to be on August 24th, 54 days before October 17th, 2023. As we can see in this diagram, the trail of signs continues on from August 24th to the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on February 24th. This is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works. And this theme of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment is an example of a story that God is telling that is extremely important. Actually, February 24th ended up being another step in the trail of signs regarding the prediction for Kamala Harris's death in a plane crash that is leading to December 24th. The date 224 hints at 2 times 24 and hints at G2424 in Strong's Greek Bible Concordance, which is the Greek word for the name Jesus. Greek letters are also numbers, and the numeric value of the name Jesus in Greek is equal to 888. The number 24 is 8 plus 8 plus 8. The other prophetic signs on February 24th also revealed the number 8. This includes the S&P 500 stock market index's close for the weekend at 5,088.80. The stock market closed at 5,088.80 points because the most central prophecy in the Bible describes a period of time between the decree to rebuild Jerusalem and Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem in his first coming. From the text of the prophecy, it is straightforward that this period of time is 5,888 moon cycles, which means that the year of Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem in his first coming was a year in which there was an extra month of Adar in the Hebrew calendar. The year 30, 31, and 33 AD did not have an extra month of Adar. This is one clear reason for how it is indisputable that the year of Jesus' triumphal entry and his death and resurrection was in 32 AD. This prophetic stock market sign also proves this. And the Boston Celtics basketball team's 8th win in a row, giving them an 8-game lead over the next team, and the dangerous basketball court storming incident after the 8th ranked Blue Devils college basketball team lost to the Deacon Demons in an upset. Also on February 24th, Trump won the primary for the 8th state to join the Union, when he beat the former governor of the 8th state. Trump campaigned in the capital of the 8th state on the day of Harris's third visit to the 8th state this year, which hinted at 3 8s and 888. The name Trump in simple English gematria is equal to 88. Donald J. Trump in English gematria is equal to 888. The S&P 500 stock market index closed at 5,088.80 on February 24th, hinted at adding 5 times 8 days from February 24th to reach April 4th. 5 times 8 days after the stock market was closed at 5,088.80 points was the date 4/4, April 4th. The Antichrist is the 44th president and also the basketball president who wore jersey number 23 in high school. It is predicted that the 44th president will become the president again after the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash, and the date 4/4 in 2024 was exactly 2 times 3 years, which hints at the number 23. After the crash of the Thunderbirds jet that was number 4 in its squad on the date 4/4 in 2018. Thunderbirds jets are F-16s, which hints at 4 times 4. This Thunderbirds jet crashed in the 36th state, and the number 36 hints at 666, the number of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy. Alaska is the 49th state to join the Union. The 49th vice president is predicted to die in a plane crash, which will lead to the return of the 44th president to the White House. And on the date 4/4, Alaska Airlines announced that it had received $4 times $4 million from Boeing for the door that blew out of its plane in January. This announcement regarding $4 times $4 million on the date 4/4 was exactly 4 times 4 days before 2 Japanese military helicopters collided and crashed. 4 plus 4 Japanese military crew died in the crash. In God's signs, helicopter blades are symbolic of the letter X, which is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist that is described in Bible prophecy. Also, the mark of the Antichrist changes a person's chromosomes, which is symbolized by an X. An X helicopter blade hints at 4 points, and 2 helicopter blades hints at 4 and 4. The 2 helicopters and their blades that hinted at 4 and 4 crashed and killed 4 plus 4 people 4 times 4 days after the date 4/4 and the announcement regarding $4 times $4 million. The reason why God is using Japan in his signs is that the land of the rising sun, with a sun on its flag, is symbolism for the coming catastrophic solar flare that will knock out America's power grid, and Japan is symbolism for nuclear bombs. Also on the date 4/4 in 2024, demolition of the Uranus building in Taiwan began. Images of the Uranus building that was leaning on a 25-degree angle after the strongest earthquake in Taiwan in 25 years became emblematic of the destruction in Taiwan. In other words, the Uranus building came to symbolize the Taiwan earthquake. Uranium is used in the production of nuclear bombs, and uranium was named a couple of years after the discovery in 1781 of the planet Uranus. The name for uranium was inspired by the discovery of the planet Uranus. In God's signs, Uranus is symbolic of nuclear bombs. Barack Obama was the first sitting president to visit Hiroshima, Japan. The Taiwan earthquake was 7.4 in magnitude, which hinted at the date 7/4, which symbolizes America, making this earthquake a warning of judgment for America. The demolition of the Uranus building occurred on the same day as the 4.5 magnitude earthquake, that shook New York City. where the dirty bombs are predicted to explode, and it was said by people in New York City that the earthquake felt like a bomb had exploded. This 4.8 magnitude earthquake was centered in a town named White House Station in New Jersey, and this 4.8 magnitude earthquake hinted at the future 48th president, Barack Obama. The 44th president will become the president again through the use of the 25th Amendment. This is why on the date 4/4, demolition began on the Uranus building that was leaning at a 25-degree angle after the strongest earthquake in Taiwan in 25 years. God is communicating that after the bombs with nuclear uranium material are detonated in Manhattan, New York City, there will be a large-scale evacuation. The 44th president became the president in 2009. In God's signs, the number 9 is the most important number, as from the Bible it symbolizes God's judgment. The news stories of the Taiwan earthquake focused on the hundreds of people that were trapped in the national park that needed to be evacuated. On the date 4/4, 9 people were rescued and evacuated from a cave system named 9 Turns in the national park. The date 4/4 was 4,444% of a calendar year after the beginning of the 444-day Iran hostage crisis, which began on the date 11/4 in 1979, and the date 11/4 hints at 11 times 4 equals 44, and the Iran hostage crisis led to the attempt to rescue the hostages in what was known as Operation Eagle Claw, which was aborted after only 5 out of 8 helicopters made it to the first stage in the desert of Iran, after which 4 plus 4 U.S. military service personnel were killed and 4 were injured in an aviation disaster in the desert. And this date 4/4, that was 4,444% of a year after the beginning of the 444-day Iran hostage crisis, is also 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 days exactly before the date it is predicted that dirty bombs or a suitcase nuke will be detonated in Manhattan, New York City. So far, I have explained how the big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, and I have explained how the trail of signs was leading to the date February 24th in regards to the date that Kamala Harris is predicted to die in a plane crash. Her plane crash is predicted to be on December 24th, 4 plus 4 days after it is predicted that dirty bombs will explode in Manhattan. The trail of prophetic signs that are leading to the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash led to February 24th. The same is true regarding the prediction that 2 dirty bombs or a suitcase nuke will be detonated in Manhattan, New York City on December 16, 2024. Like Harris's predicted plane crash, God was also pointing to February 24th ahead of time regarding the prediction that 2 dirty bombs will be detonated in Manhattan. Likewise, the signs on February 24th revealed adding 5 times 8 days to reach the date 4/4, and as was explained, the signs on the date 4/4 in terms of the dirty bomb explosions in New York City revealed adding exactly 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 days, 4 to the power of 4 days, to reach December 16th, the date it is predicted that the dirty bombs will explode and there will be an evacuation in New York City. The signs on February 24th included the largest peacetime evacuation in the United Kingdom in order to enable the safe removal and detonation of a recently discovered 500-pound World War II bomb. Also on February 24th, An explosive was detonated outside the office of the Attorney General of Alabama after the Alabama Supreme Court ruled 8 days before February 24th that embryos are human life. These very important signs are explained in the Alabama BOMB video. God developed elaborate trails of signs that led to February 24th in order to communicate extremely important knowledge through the many different stories contained in these trails of prophetic signs. There are about 70 videos related to the predicted dirty bomb in New York City on this channel that predict that these dirty bombs would explode and there would be an evacuation from Manhattan Island on February 3rd. Each of these videos tell a different and very important story that everyone needs to know, and these stories are developed through trails of connected prophetic signs that led to February 3rd, 2024. In other words, God's prophetic signs connected to February 3rd, and then on February 3rd we received the prophetic sign that was expected in advance of February 3rd. The prophetic sign that occurred on February 3rd that was expected in advance of February 3rd was the U.S. airstrikes in Iraq and Syria in response to the drone plane attack on the U.S. Tower 22 base in Jordan. The airstrike mission for the 2 U.S. bombers took 2 times 22 hours and began on the date 2/2, February 2nd. 2 B-1B bombers were used in the airstrikes. The letter B is the second letter in the alphabet. 2 B-1B bombers hint at 2 dirty bombs in the area code 212, which is Manhattan Island. The airstrikes carried out by 2 bomber planes on the date 2/2 that were in a response to the drone attack on the Tower 22 base, revealed adding 22 days from the date 2/2 to reach February 24th, the day of the 2 prophetic bomb signs, and the other signs that revealed adding 5 times 8 days to reach the date 4/4, on which the prophetic signs revealed adding exactly 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 days to reach December 16th, the date it is predicted that 2 dirty bombs will explode in Manhattan, New York City. This important bomb sign and the important stories and knowledge that God is telling that relate to this are explained in the U.S. bombers' airstrikes video. For example, the 2 paths of the 2 U.S. bombers that departed from Texas and took 44 hours to complete their mission and return to Texas point to the 2 paths of the 2 eclipses that will cross over each other 44 days after the 2 bomb signs that occurred on February 24th that were previously mentioned, when the second Great American Eclipse will first enter the U.S. through Texas. This second eclipse will be on the date April 8th, 4/8, which hints at the 48th president, who is the 44th president, who will serve a second presidency. What I am saying is that when this prediction comes to pass, you should know that you need to watch every minute of every video on this channel, including all 70 of the videos that tell the different stories from God through different trails of prophetic signs that led to February 2nd and 3rd. The reason I say February 2nd and 3rd is because God was pointing to the 24th day of the month of Shavat in the Hebrew calendar, which began at sunset on February 2nd and went until sunset on February 3rd, and the airstrikes on Iraq and Syria occurred at midnight local time on February 2nd and 3rd. What I am saying is that the 70 videos in which it was predicted that a dirty bomb would explode in New York City on February 2nd and 3rd are 100% correct. What I am saying is do not skip these videos that are predicting February 2nd and 3rd. They must be watched. If you do not watch these videos and learn about the important stories God has been telling, you will have missed entirely the point of this prediction that is from God for 2 dirty bomb explosions and an evacuation in Manhattan, New York City on December 16th. Believe me, I know far better than you why God is giving this prediction, and it is so that you learn the information that is contained in these 70 other videos that predicted February 2nd and 3rd. All right, in this extremely important video, this is an amazing video. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to mention a couple of times the date 3/27. The Trail of Signs leads on from February 22nd to actually more specifically, the Trail of Signs that's leading to the predicted dirty bomb leads to March 27th, 2024. And as explained in the other videos, that date was the sign that we expected in advance that confirmed the analysis. The explosion of the basketball player who is known for his explosions on the court at the referees. It was his 4th ejection due to his explosion on the court, and it was within 4 minutes of the game, and this was relevant because he had just returned from a suspension from his last explosion on the court. So the headlines were 4th ejection within 4 minutes, which gave us the number 44, which hinted at adding 4 plus 4 days to get the date 4/4, April 4th. And that was the day of the Uranus building sign, as explained in other videos. And Uranus is symbolic of uranium and the material used in a dirty bomb. And the related prophetic signs that occurred on the date 4/4 are in turn exactly 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 weeks. In other words, 4 to the power of 4 weeks before the date it is predicted that the dirty bombs will explode in Manhattan, New York City on December 16th, 2024. Now, the rest of this video is amazing, and it's important to know the information that God is communicating through his big picture of signs here regarding this. All right, to begin this truly astounding and truly amazing video, it first needs to be briefly explained that this video was produced prior to April 13th, 2023. This is actually a typo. This should say 23. Now, prior to this date, it was known ahead of time that God was pointing to this date ahead of time as being related to the coming dirty bombs, explosions in Manhattan, and evacuation from Manhattan Island. The signs we received on this date confirmed all of the analysis, and they are explained in one of the most important videos on this channel, the 54th Massachusetts Regiment video. Coincidentally, I just said that at the 54-second marker of this particular recording. And anyway, the reason why that is amazing is because of the signs on this date that hinted at 54 and led to exactly 7 plus 7 plus 7 days later, the date 5/4, May 4th, which was another step in the trail of signs. And the reason for the 54, again, is the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, which was the signs on this day that pointed to this, including, just for example, the hockey game in Boston, in Massachusetts, involving Boston in their record season, with the ending score of 5-4. That's just one example, though. Oh, and the S&P 500, I believe, gained 54 points on this day, and on and on. Anyway, that confirms these two connections here, 45, because it's a mirror of 54. It's a hint, a reflection of 54, but also 45 is relevant because 45 is the 9th triangular number, which in a triangle of numbers, the last number in the 9th row is 45. And the number 9 is the most important number in God's big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel, as from the Bible, the number 9 symbolizes God's judgment. And this is precisely what we are talking about here with these explosions that are predicted to occur in Manhattan and the explosion that is predicted to occur on the surface of the sun. Now, this date here was known a long time, even before April 13th, actually, at least at the beginning of 2023. Probably late 2022. But this date was known to be very important ahead of time, related to the coming explosion on the surface of the sun that will knock out the nation's power grid. And lo and behold, we had a news story, a national news story on this day regarding a solar flare on the surface of the sun. This solar flare on this day, which was an X-class flare, which don't happen every day, knocked out the power, the service for 74,000 AT&T customers at the peak, as detected by the website Down Detector. And 74,000 is astounding too, because 74 is a number that hints at America. The date 7/4, July 4th, is symbolic of America, and that's why God uses 74. And that's why it was 74,000 customers that went without power, or rather service, on this day due to the solar flare, which is hinting at the coming power outage due to the solar flare. Now, other videos, and there are about 70 of them, many of them will explain how it is that April 13th in God's trails will explain a trail of signs, or rather many trails of signs from April 13th, 2023 that lead us to the date it is predicted that the bombs will explode in Manhattan on March 27th. Anyway, one of these trails actually goes through this date here. In other words, April 13th, in fact, does connect with the trail of signs to this date. And as we can see in this diagram, however, this date connects all the way back to this date, which was this bomb cyclone sign, which I'll explain in a minute. Anyway, this date connects on with a trail of signs to March 27th as well. This was the day of the, among many other things, the 67th IAEA conference, International Atomic Energy Association conference, and that hinted at adding 67 days to get us to December 2nd, which was another major step in the trail of signs. The Okinawa Obama video explains that, and that date is 9 weeks exactly to February 2nd and 3rd, and on and on. And so, anyway, the point is that it connects to the trails of signs as well. And that's how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It is a interconnect. The full intended meaning of God's prophetic signs cannot be properly understood without their context and connections to other prophetic signs, and this engenders a web, a spider web, if you will, of connected signs, and they produce these trails of signs. And so anyway, the point is that all of the analysis in this video is 100% correct. And at the beginning of this video, with this introduction that I am giving, I am explaining how these trails lead on to the date or dates that these events are predicted to occur on, which are now March 27th for the dirty bombs and evacuation in New York City, and April 1st for the explosion on the surface of the sun that will knock out the nation's power grid. Now, make sure you watch the rest of this truly very amazing and important video. One other thing too that I forgot to mention is that 45 weeks is relevant in a connection to the date 222, because the inverse of 45, which is 1 divided by 45, equals 0.0222 into infinity. And so, in other words, the number 45 is symbolic of a series of tubes. And that is the prophetic significance of this date. In fact, the reason why God did this, had this solar flare sign that I explained on this date, is because of it being a series of tubes. It symbolizes a couple of things. One, the second presidency of the Antichrist, Barack Obama, who will skip the 45th presidency for that matter, and also was the basketball president who wore jersey number 23 in high school, and 23 is the ninth prime number, 45 is the ninth triangular number, and the only president to serve non-consecutive terms, President Cleveland, skipped the 23rd presidency, just like how Barack Obama will skip the 45th presidency. This is also why, by the way, that Obama became the president in 2009. So anyway, also a series of twos symbolizes the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ, which will also be symbolized with this eruption on the sun. God is demonstrating this as a metaphor of a lion's roar, as explained in other videos, including the James Earl Jones videos. So there you have it. That is also why this 45 weeks exact connection is very relevant. It is because it symbolizes a series of twos. All right, before we begin this truly profound video, the date that this is being recorded is August 19th, 2023. And again, this video was originally produced before April 13th. And it has recently been learned that the predicted date for the dirty bomb on September 25th, 2023 will be exactly 1,656 days after the bomb cyclone, which is what the theme, if you will, of this video is about. There'll be much more than just in this video than regards the bomb cyclone. But this bomb cyclone that occurred on March 13th, 2019 was a winter storm, and as such, it is Noah's flood symbolism. The reason why 1,656 is relevant, especially in context of a period of time, is that from Adam until Noah's flood, it was 1,656 years. Don't get me wrong, I am not a young earth advocate. I do not believe that. I do believe that the numbers in the Bible are there for a reason, though. And so that's why this is relevant. This is symbolic of Noah's flood judgment, which is symbolic of judgment, and therefore judgment on America. And that's why there is this profound symbolic 1,656 days connection, which will make sense. And furthermore, of course, it is a dirty bomb we are predicting here, and this is a bomb cyclone. All right, as I just mentioned, this last segment of this video was originally produced on August 19th, 2023, prior to September 25th. God was overwhelmingly pointing to September 25th and 26th, the Day of Atonement in the Hebrew calendar, which begins at sunset on the 25th, goes to sunset the 26th. Anyway, that date was a profound step in the trail of signs, very, very important step in the trail of signs leading to the predicted date on which the dirty bomb or suitcase nuke will explode in Manhattan. The amazing, profound signs that occurred on September 25th and 26th are explained in the absolute must-watch 7x7x7 New York Fire Department firefighters' deaths. Okay, so that's a strange title. It looks better than it sounds, the thumbnail. But the reason for that is because one of the profound signs was that on this day, the number of firefighters that have died from 9/11 related illnesses equaled the number of firefighters that died on 9/11. And that number, 343, is 7 times 7 times 7. And that's relevant, of course. Well, not of course. I'll explain more in the other video. Again, it's the 7 times 7 times 7 firefighters' deaths. Make sure you watch that other video. Anyway, the Trail of Signs leads on from September 25th. It actually goes through December 2nd, and then 9 weeks later to February 3rd, the date it is predicted of the bombs in 2024, February 3rd. We are talking about this prediction that a dirty bomb will explode in Manhattan on April 13th, 2023. That's a typo. This should be 23. As I will explain, this explosion is also a prophetic sign in a trail of signs that is leading to the upcoming predicted explosion on the surface of the sun, a solar flare coronal mass ejection that will cause catastrophic power outages and blackouts on Earth. And I will explain this and how it is actually a fulfillment of Revelation chapter 8. I'll explain that. And let's begin with this connection right here. This exact 7 times 7 months, which is 49 months, back from this predicted explosion in Manhattan, this dirty bomb, to the date of this bomb cyclone. This was a major weather event in the U.S., especially in the central U.S. and Colorado and Iowa. And for example, it reached record wind speeds in Colorado at 110 miles per hour. And this bomb cyclone had a record barometric low recording. And so this was a record low of barometric pressure. And the reason why this is prophetically significant, this record low in Colorado, this record low barometric pressure, is because it happened shortly after this Super Bowl, which was the record lowest score in Super Bowl history, with the score of 3-13. And this bomb cyclone, with its record low barometric pressure, occurred on the date 3/13. In other words, this was designed by God. This Super Bowl here is a second witness confirmation of the prophetic significance of this bomb cyclone, which is in turn, as I will explain, predicting the bomb explosion in Manhattan, which is in turn part of the trail that's leading to the explosion on the surface of the sun. And so this second witness here of this Super Bowl is an example of how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter, and that's what makes it true and not a product of one's imagination. And what makes what is being explained on this channel different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. As the Bible says, second and third witnesses are required to confirm a matter. And that's what this record lowest score in Super Bowl history is. It's a second witness confirmation to the record low barometric pressure in Colorado. Now, the reason why God pointed to Colorado here specifically is because it is the highest state. Denver, Colorado is the highest major city in the U.S., which is why Barack Obama had his Democrat National Convention in Denver, Colorado, because the word Bama means high place in Hebrew. Jesus said he saw Satan falling like lightning from heaven, and the name Barack Obama in Hebrew means lightning from heaven. Barak means lightning. Bama is the word for high place, which in the Bible is a metaphor for heaven. For example, it is said that Lucifer fell from the high place, a metaphor for heaven in Isaiah chapter 14. And in the language Jesus would have spoken, Aramaic, the word from is O. And so Barack Obama is lightning from heaven. Either Jesus didn't know what he was saying when he said this, or he knew that there would be a famous president named Barack Obama and said this anyway, knowing that it would confuse us, or he was revealing the identity of the Antichrist. Obviously, the latter option is the only one that makes any sense. And the reason for the record wind speed of 110 miles per hour is because on 9/11, the Twin Towers that collapsed were 110 stories high. And 9/11 was the big judgment warning for America to repent, or else judgment destruction, which is described in Isaiah chapter 9, verse 10 through 11. And in every daily Bible reading, including the ones for Catholics, it's standard. The Bible divided into 365-day readings. The reading every September 11th includes Isaiah 9, verse 10 through 11. And so what I'm going to do now is spend just a couple of minutes with a clip that I've already made that explains how this Super Bowl here was a 9/11 sign. It's extremely relevant for this video, as you will see in a minute. And so let's just explain this amazing, truly amazing Super Bowl prophetic sign. Tom Brady and the Patriots in 2019 against the Rams. Before the walls of security collapsed on the ancient city of Jericho, the Hebrews blew ram's horns, and then the walls of security collapsed in God's judgment. The Hebrews were led by Joshua, who, as recorded in the Bible, died at the age of 110. On 9/11 in 2001, it was 110 stories of the Twin Towers that collapsed. The two uprights of field goal posts symbolize the two towers on 9/11 that were rammed by two planes that were flights destined for Los Angeles, the home of the Los Angeles Rams. The two towers were rammed 17 minutes apart. The Rams lost the Super Bowl in 2002, just a few months after 9/11, after Tom Brady, in the final minute of the game, took the Patriots from their 17-yard line to kick a field goal and break the 17-17 tie, which hinted at the two planes that rammed the two towers 17 minutes apart just a few months earlier. 17 years later, with 17 Super Bowl records to his name, Tom Brady entered a second Super Bowl against the Rams. Beginning with the Rams-Patriots Super Bowl just after 9/11, Brady has been in 9 of the 11 Super Bowls the Patriots have been in. In this year's Super Bowl, with the score at 3-13, which hinted at the date 3/13, March 13th, the Rams kicker missed an extra point, something that very rarely happens. Earlier in the playoffs, this Rams kicker kicked the game-winning field goal with 4 seconds left in the game to end Tom Brady's career. It was the Rams kicker's second game-winning field goal kicked late in the game against Tom Brady and his former team that had rejected him. It will be explained later how this symbolized the two planes that rammed the two towers on 9/11. In the book of Joshua, Joshua led the Hebrews around the security walls of the ancient city of Jericho 7 times over 7 days, while 7 priests blew 7 trumpets before they sounded the trumpet one last long trumpet blast before the security walls collapsed in judgment. This was 3 sets of 7. Joshua, who led the Hebrews around the walls of security of ancient Jericho before they collapsed, died at the age of 110. On 9/11, the Twin Towers that collapsed were 110 stories high. In Super Bowl 54, the Kansas City Chiefs were in the Super Bowl for the first time in literally 50 years, and the main story of the game was how the quarterback and the Chiefs caught fire at the end of the game in their come-from-behind victory and scored 3 touchdowns, which is 7 points each, with just under 7 minutes remaining in the game, which gave us another clear 3 sets of 7. and also another 50 years connection. In Super Bowl 53 in 2019, the winning team only scored one touchdown, which is 7 points, and this touchdown came exactly with 7 minutes and 0 seconds remaining in the game. And the only other time a winning Super Bowl team only scored one touchdown was literally 50 years before this. This connection was a main story after the game, and this gave us 3 sets of 7 and another 50 years connection. The 3 sets of 7 here is the 7 points that was scored at exactly 7.00 seconds remaining in the game, and this was exactly 50 years after the only other Super Bowl in Super Bowl history in which the winning team only scored 7 points, which is a 3 sets of 7. Tom Brady is the most famous quarterback of our time. Arguably, the other most famous quarterback in history is Joe Namath. Joe Namath's nickname is Broadway Joe because of his many appearances in the 1970s and 80s in television, movies, and even Broadway. Although heavy underdogs in the days leading up to the Super Bowl in 1969, Joe Namath famously predicted that his team, the New York Jets, would win the Super Bowl. Both Joe Namath and Tom Brady wear jersey number 12. Tom Brady was never supposed to be a starting quarterback, but Brady got his chance 12 days after 9/11, when the Patriots' star starting quarterback was injured in a game against the New York Jets. A Jets linebacker hit the Patriots' starting quarterback hard in his side. The following week, Brady was the starting quarterback for the Patriots in a game against the Colts. The Patriots scored 44 points. After Brady's stunning performance in his first game as a starter against the Colts, the rest of his career is history. GOAT is Antichrist symbolism. And the first game that the GOAT of football, Tom Brady, greatest of all time, started in was against the Colts. And he scored 44 points, which identified the 44th president as the GOAT Antichrist. The New York Jets and the Baltimore Colts were the two teams that played each other in the Joe Namath 1969 Super Bowl. New York Jets quarterback Joe Namath wore jersey number 12. Tom Brady, player number 12, began his career 12 days after 9/11 in 2001 against the New York Jets, and then he played the Colts. On the prophetic 50th anniversary of the 1969 Super Bowl between the Jets and the Colts, Joe Namath was in attendance at the 2019 Super Bowl. Just like Namath's team in 1969, the Patriots won the Super Bowl with only scoring one touchdown. These were the only 2 Super Bowls in history in which the winning team only scored one touchdown. And this touchdown score of 7 points was made with exactly 7 minutes remaining on the clock. In other words, God's purpose of all of these connections was to point to the beginning of the career of Tom Brady, player 12, against the New York Jets, and the hard hit on the side of the quarterback by the New York Jets linebacker 12 days after 2 Jets that were flights from New England, the home of the Patriots, hit hard the side of the 2 towers in New York. Now, as was just explained, this Super Bowl was all about this record low score in which the winning team only scored one touchdown, which is 7 points, and it was scored at exactly 7 minutes remaining in the game, exactly 50 years after the only other time the winning team scored only one touchdown, 7 points. That was a 3 sets of 7. In the book of Joshua, Joshua led the Hebrews around the walls of security of the ancient city of Jericho 7 times over 7 days, and then on the 7th day, 7 priests blew 7 trumpets, and then the walls of security collapsed in God's judgment. This was a prophetic 3 sets of 7, which is what God has been using in his big picture of signs frequently. There are also 3 sets of 7 in the account of Noah's flood, the flood judgment. Another association with 3 sets of 7 and judgment. So this is clearly, it's a 3 sets of 7 in itself, but this 7, this record lowest score with only one touchdown scored at 7 minutes, this gives us a 7, which confirms this 7 times 7. Because the 3 sets of 7, the 7 times 7 months, the 3 sets of 7 in Joshua is in fact a 7 and then a 7 times 7. They marched around on the 7th day 7 times, while 7 priests blew 7 trumpets. And also in the Omer count, between Passover and Pentecost, it is also a 7 followed by a 7 times 7. It is a 3 sets of 7, but it is also a 7 followed by a 7 times 7. After Pentecost, 7 days to the Feast of First Fruits, followed by, on the day after, 7 times 7 days to the Feast of Pentecost. And so this bomb cyclone follows this sign, as I've explained. The two are connected, as I've explained. And this is a 7, and it's followed by a 7 times 7 to get us to the prediction of the dirty bomb in Manhattan. And so that's why the bomb cyclone as well. Now, Manhattan is the location of the 9/11 judgment warning, where the 110 stories collapsed. Joshua died at the age of 110. That's why the Twin Towers were 110 stories and then they collapsed, because Joshua, who died at 110, led the Hebrews around the walls of security before they collapsed. And this upcoming predicted dirty bomb explosion in Manhattan will be, if you will, the follow-up judgment to the promise or warning of judgment, destruction, that were the 9/11 events. Another thing about this Super Bowl is that it identifies the Antichrist. And by the way, I explained this in other videos. But this date, because I don't want to get off too much onto a rabbit trail explaining this, but that's how the big picture of science works and why it's very, very difficult to explain it, because when you attempt to explain one part of the web, which is an interconnected web, you end up pulling the entire web. And it just goes off into infinity because it's not linear, it's 3-dimensional. But anyway, this was the goat versus ram Super Bowl, which hints at Daniel chapter 8, which is about a battle between a goat and a ram. Goat, greatest of all time, Tom Brady, played the Rams. And in that prophecy, there is a period of 2,300 days, and exactly 2,300 days back from this date 2-3, which hints at 23, was the 23rd anniversary of the 1989 World Series earthquake in the San Francisco Bay Area. And on that 23rd anniversary, a huge fireball flew over the San Francisco Bay Area at low altitude. And Genesis 1:14 tells us that the lights in the sky are for prophetic signs. And on, actually. So there's a lot, and I've explained it before, so I won't explain it again. But this Super Bowl is all about the number 23, and it includes sets of 2 and 3 within the Super Bowl. And also, for that matter, one of the reasons why 23 is prophetic is because it hints at 2 and 3. Because Jesus said in the Gospel of Mark that before the rooster would crow twice, Peter would deny him 3 times. It says it like that. It says it in that order. Before the rooster would crow twice, Peter would deny him 3 times. And this is symbolism for the Antichrist as well, because taking the mark of the Antichrist will be tantamount to denying Jesus, and following the Antichrist will be tantamount to denying Jesus. Also, the score, 3-13, hints at 3 divided by 13, which equals 0.230. And so that's another confirmation. This all, by the way, identifies the Antichrist. That's the point. The basketball president who wore jersey number 23 when he played basketball in high school. And so that is the point. And Daniel chapter 8, which is involving the 2,300 days, is about the Antichrist. Now, the Antichrist is a type of king, the Antichrist king, a ruler. And in the Bible, 30 years is symbolism for a king. Joseph and David were made kings at the age of 30 years old, rulers at the age of 30 years old. And so that's why God uses 30 years connections in his signs as being prophetically significant. And also the GOAT, greatest of all time, of football is king symbolism too. He's the king of football, if you will. which is why this 30 years connects to this Tom Brady GOAT Super Bowl. And this is a weather event, and this connects to this space weather event, this geomagnetic storm, this famous geomagnetic storm that occurred on this date 3/13 in 1989. And this storm triggered the massive power outage in Quebec. So the geomagnetic storm hit, and because of its vulnerability on the Canadian Shield and the Rock, the James Bay Power utility went out within 90 seconds, and it was the second big power outage in Quebec within 11 months. That is a clear combining or pairing of 9 and 11. And pairing numbers is the simplest way for God to provide second and third witnesses that confirm matters. For example, this is in fact a pairing as well. It's a pairing of two 23s, because 3 divided by 13 is 23. But God pairs 9 and 11, of course, to hint at the 9/11 judgment warning sign. And so the power utility going out within 90 seconds of the storm, and the second power outage within 11 months, major one, and it lasted for 9 hours. So that's another confirmation, a second witness of the second witness. So it was 9 hours it lasted, and it hit 90 seconds after the storm, which was the second one in 11 months. It affected power in the U.S. as well, and caused, for example, the power to go out at the the Toronto Stock Exchange, and it revealed the vulnerability of power utilities to a event such as the equivalent to the Carrington event in 1859. And that's also why it was prophetic. It was a big wake-up call, this event. And it had this 9/11 symbolism. And again, it's all pointing to, well, the 9/11 Super Bowl, first of all, because it's, after this, 30 years exactly. And then the dirty bomb in Manhattan. And then, ultimately, this prophetic sun explosion, the predicted sun explosion, which will fulfill Revelation chapter 8, verse 7, the beginning of the first trumpet of the 7 trumpets in Revelation chapter 8. And it is predicted that this upcoming explosion on the sun will be devastating because of the power outages that it will cause. And likewise, this magnetic storm here, this geomagnetic storm in 1989, is all about this historic Quebec power outage. And that's why this is astounding and why this is a very important video. What I've just demonstrated to you is a clear, very simple trail of signs that is leading from the geomagnetic storm from the sun in 1989 to the big one in 2024, okay? One thing I forgot to mention, or now is a good time to mention, is as I was mentioning, in the Omer count from Passover to Pentecost, it is a 7 followed by a 7 times 7. Pentecost is symbolism for the church. And Pentecost literally means 50. And this storm here, the following morning, caused a tornado right at where the Great American Eclipse, the path of totality of the Great American Eclipse peaked, the one in 2017. It peaked right over the center of the country, over an area of the country nicknamed Little Egypt, including southwest Kentucky, where on the 14th in the morning, but it was part of the same storm. This storm was overnight, and by the way, it caused thousands of people to be stranded at the Denver airport, the highest place, which was more high place symbolism, furthermore, because it's airplanes. And furthermore, the Antichrist will rise to power through a plane crash, the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash, which is predicted to be on June 30th. Arguably, this is a sign in the trail of signs that is leading to Kamala Harris's death in a plane crash. I forget, but there is a trail of signs from these signs to June 30th. I could make another video about that. But that's why the significance of the airport in the story, because that was a big part of the story, is how thousands of passengers were stranded inside the Denver airport all night into the next morning when this tornado ripped the roof off a church, Mount Zion Church in West Paducah, Kentucky, which is right where the eclipse peaked in the path of totality, the 17-mile wide path of totality, by the way, which could arguably another 7 followed by a 7 times 7. But what's interesting about that is that this date, March 14th, 2019, was part of a trail of signs that was parallel with the timing of events in the book of Joshua. And again, Joshua died at 110, that climaxed with Pentecost in 2019, when symbolically the walls of Jericho collapsed in God's judgment. In other words, in 2018 and 2019, and arguably also, and well, yes, 2020 as well, but a different sort, God demonstrated parallels of prophetic signs that, trails of prophetic signs that paralleled the timing of events in the book of Joshua. That's explained in other videos. I won't explain it. The point why I'm saying this is that this sign here that occurred with the roof being blown off of the church led to Pentecost, which again symbolizes the church. The big story of this was that inside this church in that morning, there were 40 preschoolers and 10 teachers, 10 adults, that were inside the church as the roof was being ripped off completely. They got themselves into the inner room, which is symbolic of the temple, the inner sanctuary, and they sang songs like "Jesus loves me" as the tornado ripped the roof off of the church building, and it was 50 people, and this again led to Pentecost, which means 50th, and Pentecost symbolizes the church, and 50 people were inside this church. This was a massive judgment warning sign for the church, because as Peter said, judgment begins with the church. And God is very, very displeased with the American church. And that includes evangelicals, and arguably especially evangelicals, if we go by God's prophetic signs. Jesus reproves whom he loves, and he has clearly demonstrated that the American evangelical church, specifically the evangelical church, is the church of Laodicea, that thinks it is in need of nothing, and does not realize that it is blinded and poor and pitiable and naked, as Jesus said in Revelation chapter 3, which is why you would think that the roof was torn off and the people inside were exposed. It was a warning. And this was one of a number of church roof warning signs, church roof destruction warning signs. For example, the only building that was damaged and burned on fire in the 7.0 magnitude earthquake in the 49th state, 7 times 7, was a church in Anchorage, Alaska. Anchorage symbolizes Jesus and the church. It was the church roof that burned because of the downed power line. Speaking of power outages, and church roof destruction signs are symbolic and point to Pentecost, because on Pentecost, the disciples were in the upper room waiting for the Holy Spirit and the tongues of fire. And so that's also why the fire in the roof sign. But roof destruction signs in themselves are hinting at the upper room on Pentecost, which symbolizes the church. That's just one of many. You know, everyone's familiar with, of course, the Notre Dame roof fire, the 9-hour roof fire, because 9 is the most important number in God's big picture of signs. As from the Bible, it symbolizes God's judgment, and on and on. And what you need to do is watch the 23 church signs video, arguably on this channel, the most important video on this channel. Make sure you watch the 23 church signs video. And what I am saying is that this was a church judgment warning sign on the American church. Okay. And that's why also 7 times 7 months from this, from the church that was in the 70-mile wide path of totality of the eclipse judgment warning sign. Also, as I just mentioned, this roof that was torn off of the church in Kentucky in the path of totality of the Great American Eclipse, It was part of a trail of signs that was leading to Pentecost in 2019 that was a parallel with the timing of events in the book of Joshua. And on that Pentecost, we received one prophetic sign that caused me to need to go for a long walk after it was discovered. There was a rare 3.2 magnitude earthquake in Jericho, in Washington State, and I explained that in other videos. But that was quite something because the walls of security collapsed on Jericho due to an earthquake, and we were expecting such a sign, and then there was this rare earthquake in Jericho. It's amazing beyond words. But the other thing too is that because one of the themes of this video is blackouts, power outages, this was the day of the massive power outage in Argentina. 44 million people without power, almost the entire nation. And that was on Pentecost, and there was another Catholic Church sign, the Notre Dame opened for the first time, I believe, on that day. But anyway, that was on Pentecost, and Pentecost literally means 50th day. And 50 days after this 44 million power outage in Argentina was the day of the power outage in Indonesia, where the 44th president grew up for 4 years and there were 4 deaths. And it was the 44th president's birthday in that power outage. And these two power outages are separated by 50 days, and it begins at Pentecost, which means 50 days. And these two locations, Argentina and Indonesia, are the two places that symbolize where the two antichrists are from, or they are the places where the two antichrists are from, which points to the two antichrists. The first and second antichrist described in Revelation chapter 13, the first one being the first in chronological order of the two blackouts, Pope Francis, and the second, who gets his power from the first, who speaks like a dragon, Barack Obama. And that's also why that's also why 44 million in the power outage in Argentina. But that was worth bringing up here because this theme and one of the themes in this video is power outages. Also on that same day as the 4 deaths it was Jakarta, Indonesia, by the way, which is where the 44th president grew up for 4 years. But also on that same day, it was also the 44th president's birthday. And the same day, there was a mass shooting, which was perhaps arguably a little bit bigger of a deal back then than it is these days. But there were 9 deaths and 17 injured, which also identified Barack Obama, who was president from 2009 until 2017. And also first arrived in Washington, D.C. as the senator from Illinois during the 109th Congress, lived on 109th Street while studying at Columbia University, and will return as the president in the District of Columbia due to the shenanigans that brought in the president in the 117th Congress. The day before, on August 3rd, 2019, was the day of the 23 deaths and 23 injured in the El Paso shooting. The basketball president wore jersey number 23 when he played basketball in high school. All right, now, one last thing here is that this predicted dirty bomb explosion in Manhattan, which will cause a mass evacuation of Manhattan Island, will be exactly 45 months after the extremely prophetic Manhattan blackout, which I have made an amazing video explaining. It's about an hour. It's one of the most important videos regarding the prediction for the explosion in Manhattan. Make sure you watch it. And as I explained in that video, during the Manhattan blackout was Manhattanhenge, this event that occurs in Manhattan only twice per year when the sun sets directly within the canyon walls of the grid of Manhattan. And again, in Genesis 1:14, it says that the lights in the sky are for prophetic signs, first and foremost, before day and night and seasons. It says that they are for prophetic signs, and the sun is the brightest light in the sky. And so we have this Manhattanhenge prophetic sign during the Manhattan blackout. In other words, it was an emphasis of Manhattanhenge. In other words, the Manhattan blackout pointed to Manhattanhenge. The Manhattan blackout pointed to Manhattanhenge in order to point to the upcoming catastrophic solar flare explosion on the surface of the sun that will cause catastrophic power outages and blackouts. And it's exactly 45 months. Now, 45 months, well, first, the 45th president is from Manhattan. But 45 is prophetic because it's the 9th triangular number, which in a triangle of numbers, the last number in the 9th row is 45. And as I just explained, the most important number in God's signs is the number 9, as it symbolizes God's judgment. Also, 45 is a multiple of 9. And also, 45 hints at 4 plus 5 equals 9. And 45, the 45th presidency was a big trumpet warning. Trump in archaic English, it means trumpet. Trump's presidency, the 45th presidency, was one big trumpet from God, a trumpeting from God of judgment and destruction of America and the Antichrist, who will skip the 45th presidency. The 44th president will soon be president again. I believe that will be in November this year. And so that's why 45. Now, from here, from this, and again, the 45th president is from Manhattan, from this prediction for the Manhattan dirty bomb and evacuation, it will be exactly 45 weeks to the date it is predicted that there will be a catastrophic explosion on the surface of the sun. And this event, this catastrophic solar flare explosion on the surface of the sun, is predicted to occur on the date 2/22, February 22nd, and the reciprocal of 45, which is 1 divided by 45, is 0.22222 into infinity. And so the number 45, in other words, hints at a series of 2s. And that's why it is exactly 45 weeks to this date 222 from this momentous prediction event that is predicted to occur in Manhattan, this dirty bomb explosion. So that's 45 again, relevant for everything that I just explained, but it's also confirmed as a second witness to this, because this is a sun event. And so we have 45 months followed by exactly 45 months, followed exactly by 45 weeks to the sun event. And so these this 45 months and 45 weeks are second witnesses to each other. All right, now 45 weeks is also 315 days. This is relevant because God's end times number is 2,520, and divisors of 2,520 are prophetic in God's signs. 2,500, and this is a number from Bible prophecy, by the way. 2,520, it's, by the way, it's 7 biblical years. Biblical years made up of 12 months of 30 days each. So anyway, 2,520 divided by 315 is 8. Okay, these are the two divisors, 315 and 8. And through this, God is pointing to Revelation chapter 8, which is what as I explained, the first trumpet judgment is this, what's being described in Revelation chapter 8 is an explosion from the surface of the sun, a solar flare coronal mass ejection. And that's why this 45 weeks is 315 days, because it hints at 2,520 divided by 315 equals 8, as in Revelation chapter 8. And so there you have astounding beyond words, big picture here of these sun prophetic signs. These are huge. You need to watch the Manhattan blackout video. This is huge, and this one is big too. And not only are they sun prophetic signs, but they're also power outage prophetic signs, blackout prophetic signs, sun and blackout prophetic signs. And it connects with exactly 30 years to this weather event as well, from the high place. The sun is the high place as well. And this is an amazing beyond words, a big picture that's leading to not only this prediction of the dirty bomb in Manhattan, but also this prediction of the explosion on the surface of the sun that will cause catastrophic power outage blackouts. All right, one thing that arguably I forgot or was missing from the original diagram here, one last connection here, which is astounding as well, is that exactly 3 years before this Super Bowl was this Super Bowl. Correction, not 3 years, 6 years, exactly 6 years. And it was on the same date. And as I explained earlier, this date of 2-3 was prophetic because it hinted at the number 23, which again reveals the identity of the Antichrist, the basketball president that wore jersey number 23. And so it's exactly 6 years because the Super Bowl is on a Sunday, and so they aren't always on the exact date, same date, but this is. And it's exactly 6 years, which is hinting at the Antichrist, whose number in Bible prophecy is 666. And that is also, there's more witnesses to the fact that that's relevant in this Super Bowl, which I'll explain. But this Super Bowl is, another second witness to the relevance of this connection is that both of these Super Bowls were played in stadiums named Mercedes-Benz. The stadium in this one was in Atlanta, this one was in New Orleans, but both of them just happened to be the named Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Okay, now this Super Bowl is known as the Blackout Super Bowl because just after the second half got going of the game, there was a 34-minute blackout. And that blackout occurred immediately after. And by the way, they never really figured out the cause of that blackout, and that in the mechanics, the engineering of the electricity in the stadium, and that's because it was done by God. But anyway, the blackout occurred immediately following the longest kickoff return in history. So the second half began with a kickoff, and that kickoff was returned for a touchdown, and then the blackout happened. And that blackout was the longest kickoff return in history, Super Bowl history. It was a 108 yards. It might even be longest in all of history because you can't even get much longer than 108 yards. The only more yardage you could have is 109 because the end zone plus the field is 110 yards. So it's 108 yards was the kickoff return, and that's because it was prophetic, and that's when the blackout happened. The reason why that's prophetic is because 108 is a multiple of 9, and it adds up to 9. 1 plus 8 equals 9. And again, the number 9 is the most important number in God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections. And again, the date hints at the number 23, and God pairs the numbers 9 and 23 together to confirm the signs and connections. The basketball president wore jersey 23 and became president in 2009, and that's just scratching the surface of why God pairs 9 and 23 together, but I've explained it so many other times in other videos, I won't explain it again. But again, that's how God confirms his signs with second and third witnesses, and so it's a pairing of 9 and 23. This big event of the game was involving the number 9, and it was on the date 23. That hints at 23. Also, 108 yards hints at the number 18. And God uses the number 18 to hint at 6 plus 6 plus 6, which hints at 666, the number of the Antichrist. And the 18th prime number is 61, and the Antichrist was born in 1961, and on and on. And so that's another reason for the 108 yards. This Super Bowl was also nicknamed not only the Blackout Bowl, but it has another nickname, the Har Bowl. And that's because it was the first time ever that the two coaches were brothers, Jim and John Harbaugh. Also, the coaching assistant of one of the coaches was the son of the other coach, was the nephew of the coach and the son of the other coach. And the reason for that is because one of the teams in the Super Bowl was from San Francisco, and that identifies the other Antichrist, Pope Francis. God uses San Francisco to point to Pope Francis. And this connection gets us to this record Super Bowl score of 3-13, which in fact is properly said 13-3. And that hints at Revelation 13:3, which identifies the Antichrist Pope Francis. That's a prophecy in the Bible, one of many, many that clearly and indisputably reveal that the Pope is the Antichrist. It talks about the mortal wound that was healed, and the mortal wound of the Catholic Church was when Napoleon stripped the Catholic Church in Rome of its temporal powers. And in the end times, the Vatican and Rome will have political temporal powers again as well, and not only spiritual powers over their adherents, the Catholics. Anyway, and so that's what's being described in Revelation chapter 13:3. But so San Francisco. Now, the reason for the Harbaugh coincidence of the two coaches being brothers is because this hints at the coincidence of the San Francisco Bay Area earthquake, which was one of the biggest judgment warning signs of all. I have said in the past, in the league of 9/11, but I have to take that back, and nothing is in the league of 9/11, but it is up there. The San Francisco Bay earthquake judgment sign, the World Series earthquake in 1989. And the coincidence is that the two teams in the World Series were both from the San Francisco Bay Area, just across the bridge, the Bay Bridge from each other, San Francisco and Oakland. And the World Series earthquake just happened to occur right as Game 3 got started in the opening of the broadcast. And so that's the coincidence. And if it weren't for that coincidence, there would have been many hundreds or maybe thousands more deaths, because it occurred and during rush hour. But because of the World Series, most people in the San Francisco Bay Area were in front of a television set and not on the highway. And so, so that's the coincidence, and that's what the Harbaugh coincidence is hinting at because of the team San Francisco. But what's important here is that this Harbaugh Bowl was also the Blackout Bowl, and the big thing about the Harbaugh Bowl, Blackout Bowl, is the blackout, and the broadcast of the Super Bowl, which is the biggest broadcast of the year, was about a blackout. And there was a blackout in the broadcast booth. And it's actually known for the jokes that went on after one of the broadcasters made jokes about there being a conspiracy to pull the electricity, pull the plug. But that's relevant because the 1989 World Series earthquake is all about the broadcast and the power outage in the broadcast booth as the game broadcast began. The opening of the broadcast, 4 minutes into the broadcast, was when the power went out in the broadcast booth as the world was watching another championship game, the World Series, just like the Super Bowl. And the world, the nation is watching, and then the power goes out in the broadcast booth, and then we learn that it was because of an earthquake. And that's what this power outage in this broadcast of the Super Bowl is pointing to. Again, it's pointing to the judgment warning that was the 1989 World Series earthquake. And through what I'm explaining here, it's pointing to these other things that are about to happen. And also, as I have explained, or will be explaining some more, it's pointing to Pope Francis, because God uses San Francisco to point to Pope Francis, the first Antichrist. The other thing about this Super Bowl was the quarterback, Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick is an extremely prophetic figure in God's signs, one of many, and arguably the first, men named Nick that God is using to point to the Nick-Olaetan doctrine and works that Jesus said he hates and is coming to make war on with the sword of his mouth on those that teach and have the works that are a product of this doctrine. And he has clearly identified through his big picture of signs, which is only being explained on this channel, that the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day is Reformed theology, Calvinism, free grace, what comes in the packages of dispensationalism, and a sovereign grace comes in the package of Calvinism. And this is also other doctrines related to this, or they are that doctrine. It's the same doctrine. Once saved, always saved. The myth of imputed righteousness, as evangelicals understand it. Our righteousness is as filthy rags. One verse that Luther took out of context and twisted to develop his whole theology. And all Christians will be raptured, etc., etc. The Nicolaitan doctrine of our day. Make sure you watch the 23 church signs video. Anyway, Colin Kaepernick is prophetic for that reason, but also he kneeled. He began the kneeling protests, which ended up with the Black Lives Matter protests in 2020, and the peak of which was when the church, the historic church across from the White House, St. John's Church, was burned on Pentecost. And Pentecost is symbolized by fire, and Pentecost symbolizes the church. And the day after, President Trump, the 45th president, the arguably peak of his presidency prophetically, when he marched across or walked across Lafayette Square, and the protesters were parted, not due to anything other than God. Trump didn't have the protesters separated. It just happened. And anyway, he stood in front of the church and held up the Bible upside down, which pointed to judgment on the church. And that was, and this 45th president was doing that exactly 45 months after Colin Kaepernick kneeled for the first time. But I explain more about this in the other video, the Obama returns video, which is, like I said earlier, the most important prediction for the Dirty Bomb video, arguably. All right, and so, and the protesters kneeled for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, and that's because the first plane struck the North Tower on 9/11 at 8:46 a.m., and the kneeling is symbolism for kneeling to Satan and the Antichrist. It is Antichrist. Colin Kaepernick is Antichrist. That's why he played for San Francisco. The Pope is the Antichrist. And 6 hints at 666, but also 6 years is exactly 72 months. And that's prophetic because it is a multiple of 9, and 7 plus 2 equals 9. The most important number that symbolizes God's judgment. Actually, one more thing. Colin Kaepernick wore the jersey number 7, and this connects to this Super Bowl that's all about the number 7, which connects to this, which is exactly 7 times 7 months, to the date it is predicted that a dirty bomb will explode in Manhattan. And one last thing to summarize here is that this is a blackout bowl, and we are talking about this prediction for the dirty bomb in Manhattan being part of a trail of signs that's leading to the prediction of the sun explosion, the explosion on the surface of the sun, which, by the way, will be the corona of the sun. And in Manhattan was the peak of coronavirus. The prophetic signs of coronavirus were focused on Manhattan and New York City. And on the day of the sun explosion will cause catastrophic blackouts. And so, in other words, the blackout bowl is a prophetic sign that's part of a very amazing, astounding, simple trail of signs that's leading to the blackouts that will be caused by the explosion on the surface of the sun. One more thing also is that player 7, after the blackout, player 7, Colin Kaepernick, he led his team to score 17 unanswered points. In other words, the Super Bowl is known for this stretch in which the 49ers came back strong, scoring 17 points unanswered. And the number 17 is the 7th prime number. And in the blackout, firefighters had to rescue people from elevator number 7. All of the other elevators were fine. That's astounding. God pointed to that elevator. That is also because Pope Francis, because we're talking about San Francisco, Pope Francis was stuck in an elevator and was 7 minutes late for Mass. Pope Francis was 7 minutes late for Mass because he was stuck in an elevator due to a power outage at the Vatican on September 1st, 2019. By the way, that was exactly 3 years after Colin Kaepernick kneeled for the first time. And 3 years is 36 months, which is hinting at 666, because 36 is 6 times 6, but also 2 times 18, which is 6 plus 6 plus 6. And the 36th triangular number is 666. The last number in a triangle of numbers in the 36th row is 666. And 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 all the way up to 36 equals 666. And so from the day that the San Francisco quarterback kneeled for the first time, player number 7, it is exactly 36 months to the day that Pope Francis was stuck in an elevator for 7 minutes. And that was the same day that 7 people died in the flash flood in Hell's Gate Canyon National Park in southwest Kenya, the same region of Kenya that Barack Obama was born. All right, so as I've just explained, this blackout bull involving the San Francisco 49ers. And by the way, I need to add that the blackout bull involving the 49ers connects to the BOMB CYCLONE, which is 49 months exactly to the prediction of the dirty bomb explosion in Manhattan. But this blackout bull is, or was, 38 days to the date that Pope Francis was elected. And again, the blackout bull with the 49ers, San Francisco, is pointing to the Antichrist, or is God using it to point to the Antichrist, Pope Francis. That's why San Francisco, and the connections that I just explained, involving, for example, the power outage at the Vatican when Francis was stuck in the elevator. Okay, so it is 38 days from that blackout bull involving the San Francisco 49ers to the day that Pope Francis was elected. And this is relevant because it hints at 3 plus 8 equals 11. And it would be relevant on its own because they are very close to each other. It's the time of the arrival of Francis. But it's more precise than just that also, because 3 plus 8 equals 11, or hints at 11. And, for example, it was 9 days before Barack Obama, the second Antichrist, was in Jerusalem with his extremely Antichrist prophetic sign, which was the day that he was forced to drive through the Jerusalem wall of security after a freak sandstorm emerged out of Saudi Arabia, the home of the spiritual enemy, grounding his helicopter, forcing him to take a vehicle, a limousine, through the Jerusalem border wall of security in order to get to Bethlehem. And so he was in Bethlehem on this day as well. The Antichrist was the abomination that's spoken about in Revelation chapter 12. I'm not saying it's a literal fulfillment of it, but it's a type for it. It's a partial fulfillment of it when the Antichrist visited the Church of Nativity in Bethlehem. And furthermore, the word abomination hints at Obama nation. But anyway, the point here is that it was 9 days, this prophetic event. One thing too, by the way, this was exactly 50 months, and the number 50 symbolizes the church, as I explained already in this video. Pentecost symbolizes the church, and Pentecost literally means 50th. And so it's exactly 50 months before Trump was the first sitting president to visit the Western Wall, 50 months exactly after Obama was forced to drive through the Jerusalem wall of security. And of course, the Antichrist in Bible prophecy will be in Jerusalem in the name of peace, and will be the Antichrist. He'll be persecuting God's people. It's the biggest transgression in Bible prophecy, is when the world will seek to divide Israel and make it an international city, and Obama will be the leader of that effort and movement and organization through the United Nations. Anyway, so that's why the Jerusalem security wall, and then Trump visited the Western Wall, the Temple Mount, and Bible prophecy talks about the Antichrist being on the Temple Mount. The Western Wall being the last remaining wall of the Temple Mount complex. All right, now, the day after, Barack Obama was in Petra, Jordan, which is hinting at Revelation chapter 12, when the dragon tries to drown with a flash flood God's people in Petra, Jordan. It doesn't say Petra, but many people believe that when it says that the woman will be hiding in the wilderness, that it is talking about Jews that are hiding in Petra, Jordan, after the abomination in Jerusalem that's set up by the Antichrist. So anyway, that was the day after, on March 23rd, and exactly 50 months after that was the day that President Trump visited Pope Francis at the Vatican. And it was in the news how Trump made a comment regarding the Vatican wall. Trump, I forget what he said exactly, but he said something to the effect that, I wish America could have a wall like the Vatican has a wall, because Trump's presidency is synonymous with his border wall of security, which is hinting at the trumpets that were blown before the walls of security were collapsed in God's judgment on the ancient city of Jericho. Okay, so that was 9 days, and that is a pairing of 11 and 9. As I said earlier, God pairs numbers together to confirm the signs and connections, and in this case, point to 9/11. But what further confirms that are these further connections involving the number 11 and the number 9. So 9 years exactly after Pope Francis was elected was this date here, March 13th, 2022. And by the way, again, 3 divided by 13 equals 0.230. And so that becomes a pairing of 9 and 23. As I mentioned earlier, God pairs 9 and 23 together to confirm the signs and connections. But this was the day of the prophetic explosions, the 12 rockets that exploded just outside of the U.S. consulate in Iraq, and the Russian rockets that exploded at the U.S. base in Ukraine at the Polish border. And so these were judgment signs from God for America. They involved America, the U.S., these explosions, and as I'm saying, it connects to the predicted explosion in Manhattan. But on this day, the GOAT, greatest of all time, the 44-year-old GOAT of football, announced with a tweet that he would return for a 23rd season. And this was the same day that the GOAT Antichrist, Barack Obama, announced with a tweet that he had COVID 23 days before he returned to the White House for the first time for the anniversary of his nationalized health care. You can do the math, you can make your own conclusion as to the connection between COVID and his return to the White House for nationalized health care, which hints at the mark of the Antichrist, if you know what I mean. And you should know what I mean. So anyway, goat is Antichrist symbolism, and that connects with this goat, the first goat, the first Antichrist, and his election. This is exactly 9 years to these Antichrist signs, okay? Which is in turn exactly 13 months to the date it is predicted that a dirty bomb will explode in Manhattan and there'll be a mass evacuation from Manhattan Island. 13 is a number that also symbolizes the Antichrist because in the Bible, the Nimrod, a type for the Antichrist, persecuted the Jews, was the 13th generation from Ham. Haman, another type for the Antichrist, persecuted the Jews on the 2 13th days of the month. And the two Antichrists are described in the book of Revelation in chapter 13. Well, anyway, God pairs 9 and 13 together, and one reason is because it symbolizes judgment. Number 9 symbolizes judgment. 13 symbolizes the Antichrist. And so 9 times 13 symbolizes judgment by the Antichrist. 9 times 13 is 117. The shenanigans that brought the president into power during the 117th Congress will replace himself with the Antichrist, Barack Obama. But also, 117 symbolizes Rome, and Rome symbolizes the Antichrist. And Bible prophecy makes that very clear. For example, in Daniel chapter 9, when it talks about the Romans and the future Antichrist being the leader of the Romans. That's very clear, by the way. And that's one of many passages in the Bible that are undeniably pointing to the Antichrist as the Pope. Somehow in the last couple of decades, Protestants have lost that knowledge, but there wouldn't have been a Protestant Reformation without that knowledge, that the Pope is the Antichrist. But we've lost that knowledge as a whole, as a church, conveniently right before the end times begins. And that's by design, so that many people will fall for the Antichrist. But anyway, the reason why 117 symbolizes Rome is because the maximum expansion of Rome, the Roman Empire, Rome stopped expanding in the year 117 AD. That is like the year for the Roman Empire. There was a transition of emperors and the emperor that became emperor in 117 AD halted expansion, decided that the policy would be to no longer expand. That was 117 AD, and that isn't a coincidence. And that's why we have this amazing 9 years and 13 months connection. It's astounding. From the election of Pope Francis in Rome. That's amazing beyond words. And like I'm saying, whatever is going to happen as a result of this dirty bomb, it will solidify power for the antichrists. Okay? Because, well, just speculation, well, it isn't speculation. It is predicted that Israel will bomb Iran in the next month on May 17th and then bomb Damascus on May 20th. And Pope Francis, a big thing about him is that he's big on anti-nuclear weapons. And so that isn't a coincidence either. So that somehow, and the dirty bomb will be nuclear material. That's what a dirty bomb is. Conventional explosive with nuclear material. And so that's where this is headed, okay? So that's why the 9 and 13, because the antichrists will solidify and rise to power through the events that are coming in the next couple of months. Now, this date here, as a second witness to this trail of 9 years and 13 months, this is the equivalent of 11 times 11 months, 121 months. And that's a second witness to this connection, this trail here. And as I said, second witnesses confirm the matter. 11 times 11 months pairs with the number 9. And it also pairs with this 11 and this 9 right here. This 9 days, this 9 years, and then this 11 here. And so there you have it. That's astounding and proof that the Pope and Obama are the first and second antichrists. It does kind of matter. Some might disagree, but it does matter which order we get them in. So many people think that Pope Francis, they still play the guessing game, which is ridiculous, because Bible prophecy is very clear regarding the identity of the Antichrist. But most evangelicals believe a false interpretation of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, which says that the identity of the Antichrist isn't possibly able to be known until the supposed Holy Spirit is removed. But 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 isn't talking about the Holy Spirit. And furthermore, the reason why Paul was cryptic and talked about the thing that was holding back the Antichrist as being a what and a he is because he needed to not speak plainly, because had he been mentioning Rome and the Pope and the Bishop of Rome, it would have gotten the holders of that letter into trouble. So he spoke cryptically, but he also said that they knew what he was talking about. And why would he speak cryptically if he's talking about the Holy Spirit? The he and the what that he's talking about in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, because why would the Holy Spirit be a he and a what? The he and the what that he's referring to is Rome and the emperor of Rome. When he moved the capital of the Roman Empire to Constantinople, Emperor Constantine, who made Christianity the official religion of Rome. And so anyway, that's the he and the what. And when the emperor moved the capital out of Rome, it allowed the bishops of Rome to rise and assert their power, leading ultimately to popes. And so that's what he's talking about there. And so anyway, there you have it. And when we have wisdom and understanding through having knowledge of the Bible and knowledge of God and his plan, we can clearly see that one of the biggest events in European history, which was the moving of the capital from Rome to Constantinople, was for the purpose of bringing about ultimately the Antichrist, so that the bishops could rise to power. And one other comment here too is that anyone that talks about the Pope possibly not being the Antichrist because they're playing the guessing game still, because they don't believe the identity is possibly known because of their interpretation of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, etc., it demonstrates their lack of wisdom and understanding of Christianity and history, because and that's partly why Protestants will be deceived by Pope Francis as the Antichrist. They don't see him as a threat because they've lost wisdom and understanding about what Christianity is. And but it's very clear that the worst thing that ever happened to Christianity was Rome converting to Christianity. Constantine was the worst thing that in history that happened to the church. Was the official make of the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is apostate. It isn't a legitimate denomination of Christianity, and that's the problem. Many Protestants have lost their knowledge and understanding regarding this, and they don't understand that Catholicism isn't a legitimate denomination of Christianity. It's pagan religion wrapped to appear as Christianity. And everyone should know that, including Catholics. But also one of the problems with Catholicism is that it's like McDonald's for the masses. It's like the whole thing about Christianity was making everyone part of the church, and they devised ways to make that happen, including incorporating the pagan traditions that people were doing. And you can still do those pagan worshiping, but let's be Christian and make it Christian, etc. So that was the way, and also their heretical additional doctrines such as the worship of Mary and purgatory that facilitate the bringing in of all of the masses into the church, so that ultimately they can establish a church hierarchy of a man-centered religion with a man at the top and a pyramid of hierarchical order of authority within the church, and you've got to confess your sins to the man and take the piece of bread from the man, and you got to donate your money to the church ultimately, right? So that's why they were incentivized to bring in the masses, and everyone in the entire nation becomes a Christian then. That's Catholicism, right? But that isn't the Bible. The Bible, the holy people, the set-apart people are a peculiar people. They're not the masses. That's why it's like McDonald's. It's like the lowest, quality product that the most amount of people will appreciate for the lowest cost. That's the business model of McDonald's. Well, that's the same kind of thing with the Catholic Church. And so anyway, people should know that. Any Christian with the Holy Spirit should be able to look at the Catholic Church and easily discern that this is evil and God absolutely hates Catholicism and it is apostate. I'm not saying God hates Catholics or all Catholics. There'll be some Catholics that are, of course, will be saved, but that's in spite of their Catholicism, not because of it, okay? Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, TrumpPrediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.